Hey guys, Melissa here. How is everyone's Sunday? So I got fed today with the Word of God. When I stayed home, I was just feeling really worn out. There's someone at work who just, I think I got something from her. But anyways, I'm not going to go into the details. But so I stayed home and got fed by the Word of God. And I listened to a sermon, and the more you take care of yourself spiritually, the better off you're going to be. So definitely knowing who you are, who God calls you, your identity in Him, not in, yourself and trying to make your own identity, but in who God says you are. And I saw um, what was it, a post by someone with Ali Stuckney, where someone's like, I'm not gonna lie, but I'm transgender, and if I tell you that I don't identify this way, I'm lying. And actually the truth is, and this is what Ali said, God has said you're a male, so you're a male. It's not like you can pick your gender. So anyways, moving on, the more you know God, the healthier you're going to be. It's becoming more. The more you become, the more everything else lines up in your life. So I also had a comment on my channel from yesterday, and I removed it because someone said, oh, your mother was a victim too of the abortion, and why aren't you mad at your father? And my mother was not a victim when it came to the abortion. She was a victim in her life of other things with my grandmother, but not with this. It was clearly chosen. But my father, yeah, clearly chosen. And it's just like, why aren't you mad at him? And the truth is, I think it's, it can be difficult to still process things sometimes. Like after somebody said that, I'm like, yeah, maybe I should be a little more mad toward him of what happened because he didn't care, and he didn't care enough to take care of me. But at the same time, when you start really understanding who God is and you understand He's gracious and good and kind, and you look and see how thankful you should be for what He's done for you, that sin is really no different than any other sin in a sense. Before the cross, it's no different. Yes, it was painful to go through. Yes, there were some consequences, a lot of consequences. But before the cross, it's no different. So do put the anger there toward your father too, who didn't care. And not only did he not care then, but later on he disowned me and did not care. Whether that was his way of trying to control me or change me or whatever, he didn't care. And I'm his daughter. So that was pretty painful because as a kid, I was known as Dickie's girl. That's just who I was known as. I was my father's, known as my father's girl. Amongst a lot of people, the bow and arrow shoots, we were very big in the bow and arrow, the archery shoots. And so when I would go, that's who I was known as. So to have a father who just gives up and doesn't take responsibility for you anymore, that can be pretty painful. So I think in his own way, he was trying to save me in his own way. Somebody said that to me before, and I think it was true. Like when I just looked at a video about the Whittakers, and I had never heard about them, and they're like this inbred family. They're very a lot of mental illness. I think the parents had like 16 kids or something, and they were handicapped, and they continued having kids when these kids were handicapped. So I can my family, there was a lot, I think, of things that were off with some of the folks. Some of them were country, and then on my other side I had city. And so you just see all these different people in your life. It does take all kinds, all different experiences in life. And what you come to in the end is you come to a humbleness. And I remember in one of my classes, I had said, I don't know why God chose me. Out of everybody in the world, I am one that He has chosen to be His child. And when I think back as a little girl going in Pennacook on River Road, and and seeing like my great grandmother who was in a rocking chair would just, I mean, she was just, there was something off, and I don't know what it was because I was a kid and, you know, no one really explained things to me, but she was like in a dark room in a rocking chair, and I think her husband had already married someone else. And so she had like this really dingy kind of gray hair cut over here, and it was a good cut. I still remember to this day how she struck me as so odd. She just rocked quietly in the chair, and it was like an old home. It was gross. And so when you see people like that and you've been around millions of people, as I have growing up, millions, and you just are like, you have not seen anybody who, you know, really is like a light to you. Like, so my grandmother on my mother's side was a very devout Catholic in her beliefs only, not in practice. They were not practicing Catholics, but her father in Pennacook was one of the pillars up in Pennacook Bonnie Road, where the Catholic Church is up there. So she was brought up extremely strict years ago in Pennacook, New Hampshire. And so he was, I think he gave his money to the church, I was told, instead of taking care of them. So they didn't have running water. They didn't have enough, and he gave his money to the church instead. So you see these forms of godliness, like a form of religion, but not the real thing, right? And I know my grandmother, who I talked about, was a raging alcoholic. She had done a lot of penitence, so to say. She prayed, she told me, every night with the rosary, and talked about purgatory and praying people out of hell. We know that doesn't happen, right? We know because of the thief on the cross that someone is either with God right away or they are in hell. And so there were a lot of wrong beliefs and, you know, a lot of wrong stuff in the Catholic Church too. And it really irritated me at one point, or angered me, that my mother was raised in this orphanage, and she had the strict nuns, and she had the wrong beliefs, and my whole entire family on that side had wrong beliefs. And that is why it's so important to me to have good beliefs, to have right doctrine, to have the right beliefs, because when you do, it changes your life around. And that's kind of how I changed my life around. And then on the country folk side, there was a lot of stuff going on too with atheism, and, you know, I remember my grandmother on that side depressed a lot. She owns a lot of land. Last I knew, she had broken it up and sold some of it. But there was just a darkness and a negativity a lot. I know there was, like, her son had died, and there was some stuff that had happened. But this is something that, like, even though I went to school, and I am glad I went to school, I'm very glad I went to public school, because for me, it did take me out of that family. I mean, I was around my family constantly growing up. I mean, there was no way you don't get away from a huge family, right? But school gave me a different place to learn something different, right? So even if I didn't get a very good education in the public school system, it still gave me a breath of fresh air, so to say. So I'm just saying, in the end, when you wrap it all up, even with everything you've gone through, whether it's learning better coping skills or learning, you know, you're going to do things differently, you're going to homeschool and teach your kids godly principles, and you're going to turn things around and change the next generation. And that was my goal. In the end, you want to have compassion. There is a time for anger, but like that comment today, I wanted to, you know, respond to that. There is a time for anger. There is a time to have hatred for the evil done to you. But at the same time, you want to have compassion. And one of the things my mother had said about her mother being raised in a, you know, with a raging alcoholic was, when I was older as a teenager, we would go visit her all the time. And she would continue to be abusive to my mother and say, you know, you're stupid or you're dumb, or and then once she said, I don't know why I say these things to you. But my mother had said, I said, why do you go over if she's, you know, if she bothers you? And my uncle would say the same thing. Why do you go over? You're asking for more. And my father didn't want her to continue going over because every time she went over, there was a problem, right? So you would think, don't go over. But my mother said she didn't know better. And in some ways, yes, but in other ways, she did. She did, and she made choices. So that victim card only goes so far. And when you are grown up sometimes in a victim mentality, it can be like, okay, so she doesn't know better, which obviously, if anyone did know better, if anyone knew that abortion really what it was, nobody would choose it if you really understood it. You're killing a baby, right? That's what you're doing. No question about it. But because people are stuck in their circumstances, whether it's fear, whether it's thinking I'm not ready, or whether it's there's not enough money, or community, you know, everyone's going to find out. And my mother worked at a school. So while she brought her daughter to have an abortion, she's working at a school, right? So there's a lot in the community that can be covered up. Perspective sometimes is reality. I was listening today to a sex trafficking victim, and I can relate to her background quite a bit, and it's probably because of my mother's background. So, so my mother was, my grandmother prostituted, I was told, and my mother was pulled into a lot of that stuff. And then she didn't have the ability, well, she did have the ability, but changes, she did better with food, clothes, and a roof over my head, definitely. But the inner workings, the inner work that needed to be done, she did not change. I think she tried in her own way too, because she did talk about things and had other people help her with some of the things, but it takes a lot of work to turn things around. So, so in the end, you just got to realize, thank God that He saved me. That's all you can do is kind of be compassionate and merciful in the end, because if God did not save me from all that, then I would be the same way. And I had someone say that to me before when I first became a Christian. She was mentoring me, and she had, there was some other issue, and she had said, if God didn't have grace in your life, you would be the same way. And it's true. But yet on the other end, I was thinking of that again, and I'm thinking, yes, but there is also responsibility. There is a sense of owning up to something and saying, yes, I did, you know, bring my daughter to the clinic. I did, you know, listen to my husband, or I didn't want her to go through what I went through, you know, at a young age or whatever. So, but like I said, in the end, looking back at every single family member I have had with hundreds of family members, in the end, you've got to thank God for what He's done for you, because again, He's the one who chose me. He pulled me out of this lifestyle. He chose to, you know, pull me out of fornication. He chose to pull me out of, you know, the whole culture of dating, everything. And then after the abortion, a lot of women won't go back into it. They won't go back into motherhood. And He had protected me in a way where I didn't understand everything, and then blessed me with my 5 sons. So I was looking at this woman who survived an attack by a shark, and she's well known. I can't remember her name at the moment, but she had a shark. She had an awful tragedy. She had a shark bite her arm off, and she went back into that, and she's still surfing, which is amazing to me that she went back into that. It's kind of the same thing. It's not the same, but with abortion, when you go back into motherhood, you are going to have the memories come back from the abortion. You're going to remember things when you're in labor. You're going to be feeling evasive with doctors. It's going to feel intrusive. You're going to have a lot to deal with. So you do want to do that again, and you want to mother correctly after something like that. So that's what I got for you now. And it being Sunday, just again, God's name, God's glory is what we want in every single situation. So this channel I do hope to use to help other women and to reveal God's beauty. Somebody asked me the other day in the pro-life movement, what are your goals? And I said, my goal is to use abortion to let other people, to help other women come to know Christ. That is my goal. That is my purpose now. And as I have felt this out, like, what is your purpose, Melissa? After being a wife and a mother, which was my calling in life, and a homeschool mom, that was definitely meant to be. There's no question about that. That was a calling that I felt strongly about. There has also been a calling on my life again, and that is to help women, post-abortive women, and it is to help them heal, because so many women are stuck in bondage and they have not healed yet. So once you get through all the garbage, be merciful, knowing that unless God pulls and heals you, you are kind of in the same boat. We're all sinners. We all make mistakes. I know at one point my father said to me, one day you're going to make a mistake. So I think he may have had some regret with that. I think there's some regret in his life, probably feeling like maybe he did fail me. But again, he did the best he could in many ways with what he had. He didn't have a very great education, and neither did my mother. They both came from uneducated families. My grandmother didn't even know how to read. She would sign birthday cards for me, and you could tell she didn't have much of an education. And my mother was someone who had to quit school early in life to take care of her family, just like my husband's father had to. Back in the day, there was a lot of family loyalty, and you had to take care of your family. Now we're more individualistic in society, and we don't have those same loyalty, so to say. But loyalty is to God first before it is to family. A lot of parents want to say, you need to honor your father and mother, yet they don't honor God. And the hypocrisy is huge there. You want to make sure that you are honoring God first with your life, and you are committed to Him. And part of honoring God is honoring the truth, and not to live in, denial. A lot of family members of mine were people who would be willing to cover up a lot in secrecy. So you want to honor God. And so that's what I got for now. And just wanted to respond to that comment and move forward with being forgiving. Okay, thanks for joining me, guys.